Numbers Untold. Ulysses and the unfolding count when heroes tamed the numbers. The Aegean Sea, Bronze Age, sun-drenched islands, treacherous waters, and heroes who wrestled with gods and monsters. A legend of wit, strength, and cunning Odysseus, the king of Ithaca. Or as the Romans knew him, Ulysses. He journeyed to Troy, fought for 10 long years, and then embarked on a perilous 10-year voyage home. He faced Cyclops, sirens, and sorceresses. He navigated through tempests and temptations. But beyond the monsters and the magic, Ulysses, like all men of his age, faced an even older, more fundamental challenge: how to make sense of the world. How to measure it, how to count it. This is the story of how a hero of old, through his epic struggles, unknowingly mirrored humanity's journey to tame the most elusive, yet essential, of concepts: numbers, and the ancient methods that made counting feel like a divine gift. To understand Ulysses' world, we must first understand the chaos of too many. Imagine a shepherd with his flock. How does he know if all his sheep have returned from pasture? He doesn't have paper. He doesn't have abstract symbols. He might use his fingers. But what if there are more than 10 sheep? Ancient man lived in a world of immediacy. 1 was a single spear. 2 was a pair of oxen. But many was simply many. The sheer quantity of things: the stars in the sky, the fish in the sea, the arrows in a quiver, could overwhelm the mind. This wasn't philosophy. This was survival, and a practical need for numbers. The very first calculator was the human hand. 1 finger, 2 fingers, 3, up to 10. A universal system. But for larger numbers, ingenuity bloomed. Shepherds would gather pebbles, 1 for each sheep. A bag of stones to match a flock. Fishermen would make notches on a stick, a tally mark for every catch. A simple yet profound record. And in the bustling markets of Mycenaean Greece, merchants needed more. They used clay tablets, pressing marks into soft clay. A vertical line for 1, a horizontal line for 10. Simple geometry evolving into numerical notation. The need was primal: to organize, to exchange, to manage. The method was practical: to match one thing with another. 1-to-1 correspondence. This was the dawn of mathematics, waiting to be formalized. Ulysses, the master strategist, understood the power of knowing exactly how many. Imagine him trapped in the Cyclops cave. Polyphemus, a giant with 1 eye, devours Ulysses' men, 2 at a time. Ulysses isn't just fighting a monster, he's calculating his dwindling forces. He knows precisely how many men he has left. He knows how many more Polyphemus will likely eat. He can't just say many or few. He needs exact figures to plan his escape. How many men to hold down the spear? How many can he afford to lose? His survival depends on an implicit understanding of quantities, of subtraction. He might not have written down equations, but his mind was a battlefield of numbers. The number of men, the number of escape routes, the number of turns Polyphemus might take, each a critical piece of the puzzle. Years later, Ulysses returns to Ithaca, disguised as a beggar. His palace is overrun by 100 arrogant suitors, vying for his wife, Penelope, and his throne. Ulysses has only his son, Telemachus, and a few loyal swineherds. Again, a profound numerical imbalance. 100 against 4. How do you win? Ulysses counts the enemy. He observes their patterns. He plans his attack not just with strength, but with numerical precision. He prepares his bow. How many arrows? Each shot must count. He cannot afford to waste a single one. He counts his loyal few. Each life precious. Each movement coordinated. This wasn't abstract arithmetic. This was applied mathematics. The difference between victory and oblivion. Beyond battles and escapes, Ulysses was a king. A steward of his oikos household estate. A good king knew his resources. How many sheep in the flock? How many amphorae of wine in the cellar? How many olive trees in the grove? How many servants served his house? This wasn't just inventory. This was the foundation of his wealth, his power, his ability to feed his people and honor the gods. He would have overseen tally sticks, perhaps even rudimentary accounting on clay tablets. The order of his kingdom depended on the order of his numbers. It was about managing the finite, but also preparing for the unpredictable. What did Ulysses' world show us about numbers? It wasn't about abstract infinity or complex calculus. It was about the power of limits. To count to 10, to count to 100, to count your losses, to count your gains. Each tally, each pebble, each finger count was a step out of the chaos of many into the clarity of specific quantity. It was the gift of discerning one from another, of understanding groups, of predicting outcomes based on measurable amounts. This fundamental act of counting, of assigning a value, laid the groundwork for everything that came after, from the simple shepherd's tally to the grand calculations of astronomers mapping the cosmos. Ulysses, through his epic journey, embodied the very human struggle to bring order to a chaotic world. And in that struggle, numbers were his unspoken, yet most powerful, tools. Did a goddess whisper numbers to Ulysses in his dreams? Perhaps not in formulas, but in the desperate need to survive. In the wisdom to manage his kingdom. In the cunning to outwit a giant. The numbers weren't just whispered, they were lived. They were etched into the very fabric of existence. The West would later formalize numbers with theorems and proofs. But in the Homeric age, numbers were forged in the crucible of necessity, on the shores of the Aegean. In the heart of a hero. Ulysses may not have been a mathematician in our sense, but he was a master of counting. And that, in its most profound sense, was the beginning of everything. Welcome to the dawn of counting, where heroes tamed the numbers.